session, and this is a special one because this is Juneteenth, um,
Mhm.
Freedom Day. This is Liberation Time. We get to have this session as a special session that we want to be able to talk about freedom and what freedom means, but to put it in a historical context. And
Mhm.
knew that this had to be a day that we would bring people to you who could shed light on their perspectives, but also to ground us in the history and to really understand what freedom means in
Mhm.
time. So welcome to another Say Something session. I want to introduce you to first myself. I'm Renee, coming from LA, and I will go around the room and let my sister colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Annalisa, also from LA.
Hi, I'm Gabby. I'm from LA, but now I'm in Houston, Texas.
Hey, I'm Melissa from Orlando, Florida.
And our two special guests today, they have some deep roots and connection to the work. And I want to first introduce you to Danny Gore, and then I'm going to follow up with a connection to Starita Ansari. And Danny and Starita, we welcome you. This is a time for you to also not only share your wisdom and your perspective on Juneteenth, but also to let the viewers know who you are and the kind of work that you're doing. But I think on this special, special day, Danny, could you just shed light, because I thought it would be best for you to just tell the audience of the historical context and meaning of Juneteenth, and not just its origin, but the actual history. What was this day all about?
Well, the day is about freedom that came, or the notice of freedom that came to particularly Galveston, Texas. And it had been 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, two and a half years after the Emancipation Proclamation. And when the general came, General Gordon, came to deliver this news to these enslaved African Americans there, they had known, the planners had known about the Emancipation Proclamation, but didn't tell the enslaved folks there. And that was because the planters had to get their crops in, and they needed that slave labor, unpaid labor, to get that done. And once that was done, that's when they let the folks know that they had been emancipated. And the general came, and he didn't read the Emancipation Proclamation. He read a general article, General Order Number 3. And it said that it didn't just say that the enslaved people were free. It also said that they were equal. So even then, Black lives mattered. That's the short version.
Well, with that short version, we have moved to 2020. And at least in my lifetime, I'm seeing more emails, more coverage on social media and the TV on this celebration than I've ever seen in my life. Why do you think that's so?
Now? Is that directed to me?
You, Rita.
Well, because you know, it's a thing in especially in the African American community, where we want and expect each generation to do better than we did, and I can proudly say that my 7 kids are all college educated, so that's my contribution to this country, to educate those kids, get them educated, and to get them to know their African American heritage and history. So I look at it this way, is that they're doing just what the young folks did during the civil rights movement of the 60s, except like they say, this is not their grandparents' civil rights. These are educated young people, and all of them have a voice and they don't mind using it. They're taking advantages of one of the amendments, one of the constitutional amendments, and that's the right to free speech. You know, we often hear about the Second Amendment mentioned mostly, but we have rights also to remain silent. And a lot of people exercise that right at the wrong times. So they are exercising their right, their First Amendment right.
Uh,
I also have seen a lot of emails coming through. There are organizations that I follow, and sometimes I felt good about the emails, and other times I didn't, because I felt that some of the organizations were capitalizing on Juneteenth. A few of the emails that came, the organization stated, please make a donation to a Black organization. There's a majority, and then there were other emails that were about the organization and saying, we too celebrate Juneteenth. So I'm uncomfortable with organizations that have never done social justice work in the area of race, but have done social justice work in famine and other areas, sending emails saying we too celebrate Juneteenth. So that's my spin on it. I think the organizations that authentically gave people the charge to make a gift to Black organizations are on the same page as we are. And unfortunately, other organizations are using Juneteenth as a opportunity to promote their work.
Starita, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and the new 3 Rs, so we could sort of get connected to the work that you're so powerfully involved in?
Authentically, the way I was born, social justice sister, social justice baby, grew up in a social justice house. My grandfather is one of the founders of Paragon Credit Union in Brooklyn, which is one of the first Black credit unions. I'm married to a man who, unfortunately, in his history, there's an incident of lynching, and the anniversary is tomorrow. The date was June 20th, 1940. So I authentically come with a heart and a passion for racial justice as it relates to Black people. I founded the new 3 Rs August 19th, so we're about 10 months old. And for 2 reasons. When Obama became president, my daddy said that he was happy for the Obamas, but Black people are going to pay a price. And I saw it as, okay, America is moving forward. And then when Obama won the second time, my father said that America will be willing to sacrifice their democracy as opposed to letting us be free and have the leadership. Truth be told, what happens? Where are we today? Who do we have as president? Look at the amount of conservative judges that he has put in place that will be there for a lifetime, that will impact this generation and the next generation. So I founded the new 3 Rs because when my son was 9 years old, he said to me, Mommy, and he had a nightmare. And he came and he was crying, drenched in tears. When Donald Trump says he wants to make America great again, he wants to go back to the days of people spitting on Ruby Bridges. And I said to him, well, that's not going to happen. And I hugged him and he said, it's already happening. They already treat us differently. So innocently, the next morning, I go to school, drop him off, speak to a fellow mom, a Caucasian woman who's quote unquote woke. She's on the diversity committee. I told her our family story, and she blamed me for terrorizing my son by telling him the story of Ruby Bridges. And that's when I realized that I had to do something, because no child is born a bigot. And no matter what people are doing in their homes to make certain that their children are not, what we're lacking is the Ruby Bridges stories. Because if we were to tell the truth about America's history, the perceptions that people have of themselves and they have of us will change. And that's why I founded a new 3Rs. And Danny gave us the tagline. The tagline is your story is our story. So there's no reason for people to feel uncomfortable about the work that we're doing. We're doing storytelling.
Thank you. Work that not only the children, but the parents, the adults need, the new 3Rs as well. I want to open up the conversation to freedom. What does freedom mean to you all, given what has happened over the past couple of weeks? We have come to know George Floyd and many others. For him, after him, and everyone's reminding us to say their name. But in the spirit of Juneteenth, and with much celebration going on, because I don't want us to lose sight of this moment. I don't want it to be just a moment. I want it to be that we continuously do, and to stay connected to our history, our true history. So what does freedom mean in the context of all of what we are witnessing and experiencing in this country? Danny?
Well, freedom, like they say, is not always free because, you know, in the new 3Rs, as the historian, I'm teaching history from a non-Eurocentric point of view. And that is to let people know about some of the things that Africans and African Americans, particularly Africans, have, and people from the diaspora has contributed to this country and the world that we may not know originated in Africa, you know. And a lot of the things that people take for granted were invented by Africans. And we had a lot of the Europeans coming into Africa and getting knowledge and taking it back, claiming it as their own. And with some of that knowledge that they got from the Africans, they were able to turn it against them and take their freedom from them. And the stories that they tell, another thing I've learned is about agnotology, and that's the culturally induced ignorance and doubt. And we practice that a lot, specifically in this country, but all over the world. And a lot of the things, for instance, they tell young kids, and I often say that the socialization or the brainwashing begins in elementary school.
It does.
And one of the things they tell kids is that, you know, the lion's the king of the jungle. But there's no lions in the jungle. The lions live on the plains of Africa, you know. They also say that Paul Revere warned that the British were coming during the Revolutionary War, which never took place because Paul Revere got arrested before he could warn that the British were coming. But I also let them know about an African-American male named Wentworth Cheswell, who did the same thing that they claimed that Paul Revere did, except he succeeded. And he was the first African-American elected to public office in this country. And he held public office for over 70 years. He was also a justice of the peace or a judge. But these are the things that are not taught in the classrooms. And if we don't know our history or our culture, you know, somebody else will tell it. And they've been telling our history and culture for too long. So I believe it's time that we start telling our history and our culture for ourselves. And that is the reason why I believe that we need to start with the young people, because when they can hear positive stories about themselves, they'll think better about themselves. And when they know the truth about their history, they'll definitely feel better about themselves. And in the same case, we need to teach parents also, because a lot of parents don't understand the true history, of this country and our culture. So that's what freedoms mean to me, education. That's a place to start.
I think that also, first of all, I have to apologize. There's something going wrong with my camera. So I'm trying to keep us all online. And, Danny, what you were saying about freedom being education, I 100% agree. And I think you raised this really great point about parents knowing as well. What do they do if their kids are not learning this in school, and what can we do to help parents make sure that their kids learn this history?
Well, in my case,
Go ahead. No, the curriculum that Danny has developed for the new 3Rs is, our market is pre-K to 8, because it starts very early. But as Danny said, it also involves the family. And we're now moving our program to an online program. So parents are going to be involved in it much more than the out of school time model that we've had. And it's giving the family the opportunity to two things. One program that we have would be movies from the Stromberg, where we will have discussions and questions about that. The other one is the book club. And then Danny is teaching Black history to the children. But even though the parents have their work and the children have their work, it's the same time period. And so now the homework assignments are an opportunity for the family to have a conversation about the history. I want to build on what Danny said in terms of freedom. Oppression is suppressing. And the only way oppression will end if everyone knows the truth. People who are oppressing and those who are being oppressed. And once people know the truth, then we can achieve equity. Equity in healthcare, equity in the classroom, equity in the workplace. And the next step is that more perfect union that President Obama mentioned in his speech. And the only way we're going to get there is if we teach the truth through a historian like Danny. And then after teaching the truth, we work on the your story, our story part. So people do not feel threatened when we talk about equity in the workplace, equity in healthcare, equity in environmental justice. And then I believe we will finally reach a true democracy.
I was wondering, I'm hearing what you're saying, and as you know, I have 2 little ones, and I wonder how long would that take? I'm trying to give them as much knowledge as I can through the stories that I know. Will we get there? How long? And we've been searching. Oh, I see. Annalisa, you took your thing off too. Go for it.
No, I was just gonna agree with you, so I was sharing with everyone before we started talking today about these girls that I work with, and they're using TikTok to find out about history. And, it's this like quick, I mean, I don't remember. Melissa, how long is a TikTok? Like 1 minute, 2 minutes?
Yeah.
These like lessons that they're learning. And this 12-year-old said to me yesterday, I know they're lying to us in school now, because I am hearing, from other kids, I'm assuming, and also other educators that are not afraid to use, these new platforms. So hopefully, I mean, hopefully sooner than later, and we're going to see it in this generation. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Well, the danger in that is that it's not you're not guaranteed that it's scholarly material. See, Danny has 10,000 scholarly artifacts. And so that's the problem when people take things that they've found on the internet and then they put it on social media and then people think it's the truth. And in some cases it may be the truth, but guess what? How do you connect the dots before that incident and after that incident? So you really get the complete picture. So then children can actually understand the history. And like, one of the things that we say in the new 3Rs, my story did not start in America. One of the things we teach children that there's a Black man, he's not alive now, but if he were alive now, he'll have much more money than Bill Gates, much more money than Bezos, all of them. And that's what people have to understand. I mean, my philosophy is I feel that children are taught the slave story in the wrong lens. Children aren't taught it gave America its wealth, but beyond that, the inventions that were made, and people stole the patents, and Black people didn't get credit for that. And the things that Black people were inventing before they were enslaved and still inventing now, still stealing patents and ideas. And so I understand what they're doing on TikTok, but I think it's very important that we find a way, and that's what the new 3Rs is committed to, find a way where the documents that Danny has becomes the curricula that is used in every school district in the United States. Teach the truth.
And to add to that, I often say in the new 3Rs that all information is not factual.
Definitely true. That's something, in this age of technology, right? And media is so accessible, especially now. That's something I always share with my goddaughters is, be careful on the internet and be careful of what you put in your mind, because then over time, sometimes your mind thinks that it's true when it's really not. And that's why I love your approach of also including parents and families, because I think that's a safeguard. Parents and families and other guardians can be used as people to make sure that they're managing the internet safety of their children as well.
And as I taught my 9-year-old grandson, de omnibus debutandum, doubt everything, do your own research.
Great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then on that one, it's interesting that I find at this stage in my life that I'm exploring a lot of what freedom means. And it's interesting, freedom is starting to be more complex for me. Complex from the standpoint of, does it mean something I can do? Or is it more a conceptual framework of the way in which I think, being a free thinker? Until we are free to be in our neighborhoods and be safe and not be slaughtered and not be lynched, are we really free if we have to, as parents, as friends, worry about our Black and brown brothers and sisters? And right now we're dealing with Black folks, walking out their door and never coming back. Is that a real free? And one could say on the other hand, freedom is about knowing the truth, because we know the truth will set you free. And Danny, it's so important to echo, knowing what is being given to you, question what is being given to you. The freedom work is always at work. It's always something that you have to do, and that we may take for granted that we have some rights, but we are still struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so reminded of, Juneteenth and that long history that our people have come from. And the fact is that it was about land, labor, and credit. And as long as slave owners had all of that, we weren't free. And the promise of land that was taken away from us also showed you that they knew having land, being able to prosper from the land, live off the land, how all of that feeds into what could be generations of freedom, free people. And so I feel that we're at this sort of turning point to really call everyone to task on, what it means to be free and how will I live my life as a free person in the 21st century. What will I say? What will I do? How will I show up? What will I stand for? So I feel that I'm in a new sort of way of thinking and knowing, even at this stage of my life, my new sort of awakening. And I'm just so grateful to be in this place, this way of thinking and knowing, so that I could be part of a process of justice and restorative justice and truth and truth.
Well, they also say that the racism in this country is systemic.
Yeah.
And, they have some, matter of fact, one doctrine comes to mind. It's called the 1639 Maryland Doctrine of Exclusion. And people used to often ask me, well, why do they treat us this way? Why? If you read that doctrine, it'll tell you a lot. So it's things like this that people have to be taught and learn about. And, they could come to a better understanding of who we are in this country, where we are in this country, and how in the world we get here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm so thankful you're sharing that resource with us, Danny, because I think growing up in Southern California, my education was from a Eurocentric white person's perspective.
Absolutely.
And history has always been told from the perspective of the person in power, for the oppressor. And I think that needs to be changed. And I'm so thankful for the new 3Rs that's creating that change, creating that curriculum, because we need that curriculum like 20 years ago. So I'm really excited that my goddaughters get to grow up with that opportunity.
Exactly. And you know about it too, so you'll be able to pass that on too. You learn it. Don't keep it to yourself.
Oh yeah, got a lot of learning to still do with me, my family, my grandparents, everyone.
Yeah, it's good.
We are so grateful for the level of depth and knowledge in this short amount of time that we have gained from all of you. We want to use this time, we like to have this moment of doing a shout out where you can, whoever you'd like to shout out to. Right now, I'm shouting out to all of the historians and those who are really keeping hold of the archives of African American history and making sure that we not forget the history and the truth of our history and the contribution and the brilliance of our people. So that's my shout out for today.
My shout out, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
My shout out is to the moms, the new moms that have been marching, particularly the new white moms that have been marching. And I want you to continue to march, not only just march because of police brutality. I want you to march for equity in education. And I want you to march to make certain that more people that look like me are CEOs of Fortune 500 corporations. It's going to take a long time. March with your daughters, so your daughters will continue marching until there is equity. So my shout out is to my sisters who didn't march when Tamir Rice didn't march with Eric Gardner, but who are marching today. And I appreciate you marching, and don't let us down.
Now, I'd like to give a shout out to all the parents, especially, to come to the new 3Rs to get this information because it is greatly needed, and to pass it on once you receive it because it is eye-opening and it is empowering. That's my shout out.
My sisters?
My shout out is super specific this week. It's to Dr. Walter Allen at UCLA. He's one of the first classes I took as an undergrad there. He looked at me and he said, "You're going to get a PhD and then you're going to serve your community." And I, remember standing there 19 years old thinking like, just because I liked your lecture today. But he was one of the first African-American professors I had, and also, really made those connections for me, just like you were doing earlier, Danny, when, he looked at me and said, Filipinos are the African-Americans of Asia. And when Gabby was my student, I said the same thing to her. And I, continue to talk about that relationship in that part of the world.
Part of the African diaspora.
Yes. Yes.
And I have to interrupt the flow because when you mentioned Walter Allen,
Yeah.
I have to say he was my mentor when I first became a professor.
Yeah. See.
So we love you, Walter. You're
So I'm going to shout out we're talking about the marches. I'm going to shout out those that are organizing these marches, like Annalisa.
Yes, and I would like to shout out I have two this week, to our youth who are engaging in more so now than ever, and keep asking why, keep asking questions. I want to keep encouraging you all to do that. And also shout out to Dee and Annalisa for coordinating our Youth March for Black Lives. That's next Saturday, loud and proud at USC, 10 a.m.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.